I was going to be a different teacher. I was not a good high school student for the most part, so I was going to channel my frustrations with how useless much of it felt into engaging in necessary learning from my students. I was conscious at that age that my energy was being wasted. I don't think this was common for high school students back then or any time, but you'll have to ask yourself after going back into your own memories. I had so many ideas, so much energy, but we were all lumped together with little to no connections to the outside world. Little to no context in terms of why we were learning these subjects. It's a terrible feeling to feel like your time or your energy is being completely wasted. I was going to be a teacher that harnessed this immense teenage energy and curiosity somehow and put it to good use. I actually remember thinking that exactly while doing some menial seat work one day in an English class. The good news is that I'm almost there. I feel like in our program we've created something special. An education that is using the regeneration and restoration of the planet as a way to regenerate people's love of learning. But it did not start that way in my career. It's been a long journey. On my first day of teaching, around 10 years ago, I came in and it was a well-respected teacher's class I was covering. The class all had textbooks and seat work. You can picture this with those work manuals, worksheets to fill out to keep them busy for a few days. I was good. All I had to do was manage the classroom until G showed up. I call him G because G is the first letter of his name. G, by the way, if you're watching, thank you for coming to my class that day. G shows up late, walks in, disrupts everyone. Big chaos, knocking books off desks, making everyone laugh. He had no books that day. He had no writing equipment or anything. But I knew how to handle this situation. He just needed to know who the alpha dog was. We've been taught about this. You know what the main piece of advice you get over and over in teachers' colleges? Don't smile until November. They're easier to control if you're really strict at the start. It's a good tip that I was employing the best that I could. Anyways, I give him a textbook. This is why we're using props here. I give him a textbook. I open the book for him. I show him where the work is. I show him the whole class is busy at work. And I leave him to it. I go sit back down. No dice. He's still disrupting the class. So I decide to take a different approach, the cool teacher approach, right? So I kneel down and I'm like, hey, G, I don't like doing this stuff either, man, but, why don't you just at least pick up the book and put your headphones in and we just won't bother each other for the whole class. So he picked up his book all right. He picked up his book, and he waved it in front of my face like this, almost hitting my face. So I really wanted to, again, assert myself, my first ever professional day of teaching. So I took his book, and I went, and how did he react? He got in my face, and he went, "Ah!" And then, because I backed away at that point, he picked up his desk, and he threw it at me. Overall, I'd say my first day was going pretty well, don't you? He then screamed again, ran off, out of the class. I have no idea where he went. So I just remained calm, and everybody went back to their seat work, and I went down to the staff room after class, and I asked what's going on with G, and they told me that his mom had just been in court that morning, and he was pretty upset about that. They also said that he really doesn't like school very much, and I was like, oh, I couldn't tell, yeah. But G was the type of kid, he couldn't sit still. He had more pressing issues on his mind than the exciting grade 9 worksheets and textbook work that I had assigned him. The absolute last thing he needed to do that day was have someone assert their authority over something that was meaningless to him. And yet there I was. This is what I learned from that situation. I hope to pass on a little bit of wisdom here. So the biggest thing is, you gotta bolt the desk to the floor. Yeah. That way they can only throw the chairs. The chairs don't hurt very much. Practical advice aside, I also learned that discipline with no relationship is pretty much the worst thing you can do as a teacher. There's no chance of learning there. Secondly, here I was as a teacher asserting my authority over my students so that they would complete meaningless work, which was precisely why I hated certain parts of my own school experience. Here I was, a hypocrite. Thirdly, and maybe some of you are thinking ahead, maybe you've concluded that if only I had known his backstory, if only I had known the coding he was listed under, his learning deficiencies, anything like that, if I had read his report, sure, maybe I would have been more compassionate that day. I definitely wouldn't have slammed the book. But look more closely. Is there a chance that this guy was going to learn in that class in any circumstance? Probably not. In hindsight, as I got to know G over the years, and we became friends, I realized that everything about how I was attempting to get him to learn could not have honored his strengths as a person. My actions honored me and my role as a classroom manager. And I see now where my frustration as a student myself had come from. G's tipping point was that the problems in his life were so real and so sharp, and then he comes into a classroom where there's nothing necessary or helpful or therapeutic. It's all just dull and meaningless. Can you imagine the contradiction there? Our current assumption with learning, though, is that we're able to more properly diagnose or label our students, then we can create better strategies for their success. I would argue that that is a treatment focus rather than a preventative focus. At this rate, I feel like pretty soon, students are going to be signing their names with their diagnoses and acronyms behind them. Let's see. Okay, it's not working. Oh, well, we'll just keep talking. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Now that I think about it more, wouldn't it be cool if we could have those Walmart price checker scanners so that when kids come in, we can and oh, you got Tourette's. Oh, you're gluten-free. Okay. Yeah. So if we could make that happen, that would be really cool. I'm sure someone at TED's proposed that. My point is that we still need to address the actual learning. But again, was anyone learning that day? Troubling backstory or not? We're so used to this massive wasted time in our education that I highly doubt it. I had this massive high-energy students with all sorts of backgrounds, learning styles, talents, passions, and here I was wasting their energy the way my energy had been wasted. So today, all work that happens in my classroom must be real and it must be meaningful. I am proposing that the same happens elsewhere more often, if not at least at the core of learning. The way that I was able to make this happen was by discovering the missing piece, to not only help them learn, but to help them learn how to contribute. In our classroom, we respect and honor our relationship with the land, especially, this is an article that sort of overlays how we are miseducating our youth, how we are just walking them through things instead of really challenging them. So in our classroom, we respect our land and honor our relationship with the land, especially the Treaty 7 land our school occupies, as a way to build relationships with people and thereby build resiliency within ourselves. Is it working? I would say so. It's not perfect yet, but I would say that we're sort of working towards becoming part of the environment. We're really inspired by things like this, how people can regenerate a landscape instead of taking away from a landscape. Our students become change makers, entrepreneurs, visionaries, good citizens. Mostly they become happier, and we use real-world issues as our focus. Here's a little overview of what our classroom looks like. I didn't know that they were doing this. Oh, this is so lame. This is the mannequin challenge. That's so 2016, guys. I don't remember them filming this. I don't know why there's a duck dabbing. This is an Nenshi poster. Okay, I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, you can see it. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't remember any of that. So welcome to our lab. Welcome to what I would call a regenerative education. I'm using the word regenerative to describe our education. Students here have a purpose. This kind of gives you a bit more of a background, I hope. Yeah, here. Students are introduced to various issues like climate change, urban sprawl, wildlife conservation issues, watershed issues, and many more. We take them to beautiful places, oftentimes to do so, and we bring nature into our classroom. Here, students create their own projects that have these guidelines. 1, it must improve the community in some way. 2, you must work with an outside organization or an expert, because I don't know enough. Number 3, it must be communicated back to the wider community, someone other than me. It's real. We work with real money, real materials, real projects, the real pace of change. What students were asking for was a classroom that was open to the outside world as much as possible. The result of our openness and ever-changing set of projects that we're working on is that our lab is absolutely chaotic, as some of my students will attest to. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's urgent at times, and it's peaceful at times. I'm going to show you a few things. Here's Braden working on his aquaponics experiment. So he's growing basil in the top of a fish tank. Some beautiful dark oval basil. We actually run a class business where we sell microgreens to local restaurants. Last year we earned in our classroom $5,000 by selling these greens. All that money goes back into the program to pay for students' field trips. Here's Colin and Shauna standing on our roof with solar panels. Yay, we have solar panels, but more importantly, they're working with the Alberta government on getting more solar panels on schools across the province and energy efficiency rules. So we also work on community gardens, planting fruit trees. We do a lot of upcycling with wood. Here you can see a kid's history project where he took a 285-year-old tree, a wood cookie, and he labeled the world population and the world's CO2 levels all the way back to 1785 as his history project, which is pretty cool. We think that at this point it's safe to say we are changing lives right here in our little living laboratory. High anxiety students hide here, all students at different levels of achievement. We mix them all in, all learning styles, all abilities. We don't care, we'll take you. Our Indigenous students succeed here. And what we produce are future engineers, entrepreneurs, landscape designers, horticulturalists, any type of person, even really awesome gas station attendants. Every single adult that passes through the building says the same thing after they visit. I wish I had that when I was in school. Let's pay attention to that phrase and do something about it for our own kids. I'm saying we found something here. By regenerating our land and the community, we are regenerating our youth. We are giving them a purpose and some skills to go along with it. Pretty advanced thinking as well. Check this out. This is a homemade RSA-style video where all we used was a camcorder above a whiteboard, and this kid, Jeff, just drew really fast. But the kids came up with a concept called educational sprawl, and you can watch the whole video on YouTube. But it's this concept where they were proposing that the unsustainable development of our communities, this urban sprawl, is a direct outcome of the unsustainability of our school system, how we fragment things, how we put different learning in silos, how we separate each other by age groups and things like this. It was a really complex thought, and they went and presented this at a conference. These are the types of thoughts our kids are coming up with. If you want to talk about raising the bar, please don't keep offering us more test preparation courses. Show youth that they have the ability to contribute in a meaningful way to the development of their own community. Luckily, at the same time, we have a lot of problems going on in the world, specifically climate change and reconciliation. The world needs help, right? So we need people. We need to mobilize people to learn how to grow local food again. We need people to work on complex water issues. So we have kids go out onto the glacier, learn about the river systems. We need kids to learn about conservation areas, ecological integrity of protected lands. We need people to redesign buildings so that they're better. We spend 90% of our life in buildings nowadays, and we used to spend 90% of our life outdoors. And the buildings we go to school in are sometimes poisonous. This is when I worked in Jasper. This is downtown Seattle, the first living classroom. It's a completely self-sustainable portable classroom that the students helped design. We need the youth. We need the seventh generation, as we call it, to show us what reconciliation can look like. And it's right here in our classroom, and it's right here in our Sage Garden. designed and planted by Isaiah, who came to us broken and planted this really beautiful garden. There's so much more. That relationship, that understanding of the land is what's missing. We take millions of years of evolution to become this super species that developed on the land, living outdoors, and then we put that away. We've decided to put that away to learn school. We do this for mass efficiency, I get it, but there's a better way. We can do this. It's what's unnatural about the way we educate our students. And when we do this, we have all kinds of kids experiencing success, and they get recognized, not on the report card. Kids get their pics in the media, Instagram, we go crazy. This is our Minister of Education stopping to talk to Ben about our microgreen project. This is us on CBC when the government announced solar panels slated for 36 school roofs in Alberta, worth $9 million. That was a high school outcome project, right? That's amazing. Here we are with, we meet all sorts of cool people, like Majora Carter from the Bronx. We meet David Suzuki, who's pretty cool. We host conferences, community gatherings. We do urban design of urban agriculture of spaces. We even get highlighted in other languages for a type of education that should be copied around the world. And then we become the greenest school in Canada in 2016, which is really cool. From that point, we start educating littler kids. And we have our big kids educate the little kids, which is pretty awesome. So you can see, I do wish I had this when I went to school, and therein lies the motivation. It took G throwing a desk at me. It took Isaiah planting a garden. It took my own little kids and seeing how they learn. And I channeled the impatience and frustration that I had when I went to school. And the only answers I was ever given for why are we learning this was because it's on the test. So lastly, I'll leave you with this. Parents from my generation, this message is for you. I see examples of your frustrations all the time. I see you trying to hold teachers more accountable than ever before. It's because we know something's wrong. We want our kids to succeed, but more than that, we want them to be happy. I hear this all the time. We want them to be good people that love themselves and are good to other people because of that. We want them to contribute in some humble way. We don't want their school to take the spark away. We've gone through our own struggles. We know how many of our peers and family are searching for something more meaningful. Good news is that we are getting this at some level. For instance, nature kindergartens are becoming a thing now. It's, again, cool to jump out of a tree and scrape your knee. I need you to know what's happening at my level, though, because things aren't being changed fast enough in the education system. So why are more American teenagers than ever suffering from severe anxiety? So since I went to high school, diagnosed anxiety rates are 3 times higher. Combine that with the doubling of hospital admissions for suicidal teenagers over the last 10 years. We have a mental health epidemic, and we are just putting more pressure onto our teenagers. It's not just kids like G anymore that can't take it. Many have no way in school to build resiliency. They mostly have no connection to nature, and I think this is the point. You'd be surprised to know that here I teach in Calgary, which is really close to the mountains, that over 50% of the students that I teach who grew up in Calgary, until we go, have never been to the mountains. It's 1 hour driving distance. I'm sure this type of disconnect is happening in cities around the world as the urbanization trends continue. This is a crisis. You want to help? Fix that. How are we supposed to take on resource issues facing us when most kids have zero relationship with the land, let alone take on their wellness issues? Technology alone will not save education. It will not help regenerate our youth. As one of my heroes, architect of living buildings, says, the role of technology is not to elevate us above nature, but to elevate us within our nature and within nature itself. These kids are leading the way. They are saving education and building our communities in more sustainable ways. Why? Because we gave them a chance. Here's another example. This is Lysandra and Rael at the Sage Garden. Sebastian's not in this picture, but they work on this beautiful project called Renewables for Reconciliation. They're using indigenous principles combined with technology as an act of reconciliation between cultures and nature itself. Why? Again, because they were given the chance to do this. This means kids working on developing skills and taking risks without fear of failure as the main motivation. Motivation can be found when we appeal to the best in people. More problems are solved with that type of deadline, more innovations too, more cars are fixed, more wishes fulfilled, more art created, more land conserved, more signals heard, more reconciliation, more regeneration. So let's get to work. Thank you.